Now it's time for me to talk about the first Mortal Kombat game. This is my favourite non-crossover fighting game series. It's also the first I played. I got this in Mortal Kombat 2 with my Super Nintendo on my 5th birthday. This game didn't get as much play as the second though, this one I just pop in every now and then as a curiosity. I've pretty much had everything I wanted to say about this series in my head long before I decided to do these videos. I've had a lot of frustrations with the series over the last decade and hopefully this show will last long enough for me to talk about them. People who knew me personally in the past have seen how ridiculously opinionated I've gotten over a lot of franchises. But as I got older and trying to prove my nerd superiority is something I've become ashamed of, that faded. But right now there are only 2 franchises that still get that kind of reaction out of me and this is one of them. It wasn't one of those back then, they started over the last few years. But Mortal Kombat, why not talk about that? The 2 things that always kept me coming to Mortal Kombat were its story and the world it created. I know a lot of people say fighting games don't need a story, and that's fair, but it adds a lot. I wouldn't still be fond of a lot of these characters if it weren't for the story. However, when someone says fighting games shouldn't have a story, I don't value anything else they have to say, it just sounds so pointlessly limiting. Plus, I've only ever seen it as a knee-jerk reaction after one person says they like the story and someone else explains in detail why they don't. Like, I like MK9's story. I don't because, yeah well fighting games shouldn't have a story anyway, so there. For me, it's a story and world before all else in this series. I don't need amazing gameplay, I don't need the gore, I just need that story. So most people familiar with this series can pretty much guess how this is going to go as I make my way through to the most recent games. But I've gone on and on enough. What actually is the story? Well, most of the game's backstory is told in the comic written and drawn by co-creator John Tobias. The story centres on the Mortal Kombat tournament, which takes place every 50 years and is currently hosted by Shang Tsung. 500 years ago, his champion Goro killed the previous champion Kung Lao. He then took control of the tournament by killing or outliving the other tournament elders with his power to freeze his own aging by stealing souls. 500 years later, Goro has had 9 consecutive tournament wins, each of these wins adding to a hidden dark power. As we will find out in later games, there's more going on there, but in the first, we don't know everything yet. And that's where the playable cast comes in. We have Liu Kang, a Shaolin monk who enters not only to win the tournament, but to take control of the tournament away from Shang Tsung and return it to the Shaolin. There's Johnny Cage, a successful actor seeking to prove his skill. Sub-Zero, an assassin from the Lin Kuei clan who after being invited was also hired to assassinate Shang Tsung. Scorpion, a member of a rival clan showing hatred towards Sub-Zero. Raiden, the god of thunder, who received a personal invite from Shang Tsung and took a mortal form to take part. The last 2 are Kano of the Black Dragon clan, a mercenary and arms dealer being chased down by Sonya Blade, a member of the US Special Forces who has a personal hatred of Kano. Obviously I'll get into these guys in more detail in a bit, but let's talk about gameplay. Like most fighting games, the arcade ladder involves going through the rest of the cast followed by the bosses. There are 5 buttons: high punch, low punch, high kick, low kick and block. There are also jumping and crouching attacks, a harder hit for pressing high punch or kick up close, throws and pressing low punch up close. Pressing either punch button while holding down causes you to perform an uppercut, still one of the most satisfying attacks in any fighting game. Back and high kick performs a roundhouse, another satisfying one but I find it to be less reliable. Finally, back and low kick causes the sweep, which when spammed can utterly destroy the early AI opponents. The other notable thing is the gore. Whenever a character gets hit, huge amounts of blood spurt out of them, and that's without getting into the fatalities. Obviously this was all a new thing and caused loads of controversy back in 1992, but I was playing these for the first time in 1997 at 5 years old and knowing no one else who played them, and there were definitely no arcades anywhere near where I live, so I never went through all that stuff back then. It was never a big deal for me, I just thought, they're fighting, there's blood. It's funny though, back when we first got the Super Nintendo and my dad was playing MK2, my mum questioned out loud whether or not I should have a violent game like that, and then a few seconds later I was fine with it. That's the thing, because I lived near so few people who played this game, I only found out this was a thing watching the Deadly Alliance bonus features in 2005. But yeah, the blood didn't stand out much to me, and to be honest, the gore has never been important to me. Hell, lately it's been getting tiresome, especially with the long drawn out fatalities in recent games that are shocking the first time and boring nearly every other. It even becomes funny when you see which new bit of gore technology they have and they show it off at every opportunity. For example, just count how many fatalities in Mortal Kombat 11 involve eyeballs popping out. But enough about that, let's get more in depth with these characters. I'm mostly only going to cover stuff from this game, so just keep that in mind. If I don't bring up an important bit of information, that's because it wasn't revealed yet. Starting with our main character, Liu Kang. As said, he's representing the Shaolin temples. He used to be a member of the White Lotus Society, started by Raiden and the Shaolin to train warriors to defend Earth in the tournament. While some of the others at the tournament are there for personal gain, Liu is just there to win and take control of the tournament from Shang Tsung and return it to the Shaolin. He has 2 special moves. There's his fireball by pressing forward, forward and high punch. It's a fireball. The one I like is the flying kick by pressing forward, forward and high kick. It's especially good when you hit someone with a jump kick and follow up with a flying kick while they're still in the air. For his fatality, by pressing forward, up, back and down, he'll perform a somersault kick followed by an uppercut. It's also notable because unlike other fatalities, the screen also doesn't turn dark. People like to slam this one because it isn't cool and it doesn't kill them, but I think it's perfect for Liu in this game. It's not just, he's the good guy, he's a Shaolin monk, a holy man, of course he's not going to murder someone. It's a form of storytelling through his moveset, which I appreciate. Liu Kang is my favourite fighting game main character. Above you, Terry, Kyo, the Mishimas. I like how in the first game he isn't out for some vague self-improvement or revenge. He spent most of his life preparing for this moment, and winning is going to screw him over. The champion of Mortal Kombat doesn't age, to keep them in peak condition for the next tournament 50 years later. If he wants to break Shang's control over the tournament, he has to lock himself into a fate of watching everyone he knows grow old and die around him while he stays young, and he has to keep defending the title every 50 years until he's eventually killed in battle. If he becomes champion, he can't have a happy ending. In recent years, I've hated how they've depicted Liu Kang out of fear of him being seen as boring. For me, I imagine it's the same way a lot of Superman fans hate the newest version in his films for them having the same fear and changing things to make him seem more interesting. I think it's really pointless today when we're in a world where an always good, always does the right thing character like Captain America can be played straight and be loved, but I'll leave it at that for when I get to those two games. Also, it's unique having the Bruce Lee based character be the main character and not unimportant like the rest. In conclusion, Liu's great, fight me. Next I'll talk about Johnny Cage. He's an actor who got invited and entered to prove his legitimacy. You see, he's really successful but has been accused of becoming stale and overusing special effects, the general public not knowing that him shooting fireworks out of his hand and having after images of himself are real. It's clear that he's a very talented martial artist, but it's hidden behind his silly and overconfident personality. He has 3 special moves: his green bolt by pressing back, forward and low punch, it's very similar to Liu's fireball, back, forward and low kick performs his shadow kick, and finally, pressing block and low punch together has him do the ball breaker. I like this one. Can't do it on Sonya though. His fatality, done by pressing forward, forward, forward high punch, has him uppercut the opponent's head off. This one's fine, quick and simple but effective. There is a glitch where you can uppercut 2 more heads out of them, but I couldn't pull it off. For years I didn't really care about Johnny. I liked him in the first film, but that was it. I just found him kinda boring in the games. Then the reboot happened. Now when we get to it, I'll have a lot to criticise about the characterisation in the reboot games, but Johnny Cage was the one that benefited over all of us. Enough that it helped me look back on him in the original games and like him more. He's probably gone from one of my bottom 20 characters to top 20. Sadly, I can't say the same about the next 2 who I'm going to cover together, Sonya and Kano. Kano is from a clan called the Black Dragon, one of the least interesting aspects of the franchise's story. He's a mercenary and thug, and that's all I can really say about him. He plays differently than the other characters with his special moves. To do his knife throw, I have to hold block, press back, then forward and let go of block. Then there's his kinda goofy cannonball, done by holding block, doing a clockwise circle with the control stick and letting go. This move was a nightmare for me for many years until I finally got to play this game with a stick, then it actually became quite fun and satisfying to use. His fatality is done by pressing back, down, forward and low punch up close to tear the opponent's still beating heart out. One of the better ones. Sonya Blade is in the US Special Forces and has been after Kano for years. Once again, that's it. You know, they have never revealed the reason Sonya hates Kano in the games. The film said he killed a partner and a lot of people just assumed that was the case for the games. Some trading cards around the time the game released said he killed her fiancé, but that's never been mentioned again. Some people believe it may have something to do with her brother Daniel being listed as deceased, but that's just speculation. She accidentally wound up at the tournament chasing Kano, and she and her team were taken prisoner. She's forced to fight with the punishment for losing being her team's execution. She's another character with 3 moves. Back low punch has her shoot pink rings from her wrist device. Forward back low punch is her weird square wave punch. I don't get this one. How did military training teach you to do that? Finally, pressing block, low punch and low kick together does her leg grab, which is a throw and a move that gave me a lot of trouble as a kid. Her fatality is the kiss of death, from pressing forward, forward, back and block. She creates a fireball and blows it at the opponent with a kiss to reduce him to a charred skeleton. I don't like these 2. I've never liked these 2. They are both incredibly boring, having not changed in over 2 decades, and the fact that they get a free pass into nearly every game over many far more interesting characters just because they were in the first and also Kano was good in that film one time always winds me up. Yeah, Kano may have had the film, but Sonya manages to consistently be the weakest or worst part of most adaptations, and when she isn't, they're just far bigger problems. The Black Dragon keep getting dragged kicking and screaming back into the series long after they should have been done, and the Special Force as a whole I only liked in one game. Mortal Kombat X was the worst though, having so much of its cast with Special Forces. It is a series built on Asian mysticism. My favourite part of Asian mysticism is not the US military. To give an example of how low I rate these 2, here's a list of unpopular and hated characters off the top of my head who I like more than Kano and Sonya. Pre-MK9 Striker, Chameleon, Kai, Jarek, Meat, Boraicho, Mavado, Murloc, Mocap, Blaze, Suhao, Dramin, Shujinko, Dairu, Kira, Taven, Devora and Jackie. In any future game I would gladly sacrifice both Kano and Sonya for just one of these. I often see people say you can't have Mortal Kombat without these two. To me, if Mortal Kombat needs Sonya or Kano to stay alive, it doesn't deserve to keep going. I would really be happy to have just one Mortal Kombat game that neither had these two or the third part of the boring bastard trio introduced in the next game. Next I'll talk about Sub-Zero. No one knows his name, yet. All that is known is that he's part of the Lin Kuei, a China-based clan of assassins. There isn't that much to say about the Lin Kuei right now, but there'll be a lot in future games to talk about. He has his Ice Ball, done by pressing down, forward, low punch. It freezes the opponent in place, no matter what they're doing or where they are, unless blocked. His other move is his Slide. By pressing back, low punch, low kick and block together, he'll shoot along the ground with his foot out. Finally, the best fatality in the game. Pressing forward, down, forward and high punch performs the Spine Rip. This is the most effective fatality in the game, just for the speed and how effortless it makes it look. It's also violent without getting stupidly over the top. For me, Sub-Zero is the true mascot of the series, above Scorpion. It's the blue ninja outfit in the freeze that will come to my mind first when I think of Mortal Kombat. Sub-Zero is also just an amazing character and the most developed character in the series, and probably any fighting game. Sub-Zero anyway. Not this guy. May as well talk about Scorpion next. A man from a rival clan to Sub-Zero's, his name and origin are also not known yet. He seemed to absolutely despise Sub-Zero. By pressing back, and low punch, he will perform the franchise's most iconic move. Get over here! It's a good one. Not only dragging the opponent to you, but also leaving them dizzy for a follow-up. His other move is the Teleport Punch. Pressing down, back, high punch lets him shoot off the end of the screen, reappear the other side and punch. His fatality gives a hint to his true nature, as pressing up twice has him pull off his face to reveal a skeleton head, which then breathes fire on the opponent and reduces them to a skeleton. This is also the origin of Toasty! Obviously Scorpion and Sub-Zero use the same sprites with different colours to save space on the arcade board. More of these Polyswap ninjas would appear as the series goes on, but Scorpion is notable for being the only Polyswap ninja that actually is a Japanese ninja. My opinion of Scorpion has gone up and down over the years. Eventually I got very tired of him being treated as the sole icon of the franchise, being front and centre on every promotional image and box and having been the first character on the select screen in every game since Deception. The last couple of games have brought me back around to him, but I've never seen him as one of the best characters in the series. I mean, get over here! It's cool, and he'll have some good story in a few games, but if I ranked the characters of this series, I'd put him around the middle. Finally we have Raiden, the God of Thunder. Not Raiden. Yes, the spelling of his name is from the Japanese God of Thunder, but he isn't the Japanese God of Thunder. According to John Tobias' old Mortal Kombat Mythologies website, Raiden is every God of Thunder from every mythology. He's Raiden, and Thor, and Zeus. Anything from those mythologies that doesn't match up with what we see of Raiden is something that group got wrong when witnessing him. On that note, I will never understand how some people consistently get MK characters' names wrong when their name is shouted out every time they're chosen or win a round. You know, Raiden, Katana, Milena, Raiko, Naitara, Daigon, usually a lot of I sounds in places they don't belong. You have to be deliberately blocking your ears every time you play the game. But Raiden, he's portrayed a bit differently in this game, shown as being a little arrogant and aware that he's above all the puny mortals, but later games show him as the mentor to the good guys, being the one who started the White Lotus Society to defend Earth and actually being the god chosen to be its protector. According to John Tobias, Raiden was always intended to be the mentor, but he didn't have space in the game's short bio to include that, and a lot of his ruthlessness here is supposed to be a joke. Of course, being the Thunder God, he can shoot electricity with down forward low punch. By pressing back forward we have his most iconic move, the Torpedo, far more memorable than the electricity. It's also accompanied by the Gibberish. It started with Raiden in this game, but random gibberish became a sort of staple in the series going forward. It's great, you just can't have the torpedo without the gibberish, MK11. Finally, he can teleport by pressing down and up. He turns into pure electricity and reforms on the other side of the screen. It looks cool. His fatality, however, is the weakest in the game. By pressing forward, back and high punch, he'll blow up the opponent's head with electricity. Kinda lame really. Although to be honest, Raiden gets stuck with the lamest fatalities in nearly every game he's in. Raiden's fine, but his personality in the games is kinda boring. I would like it if they just implanted the personality of Christopher Lambert's more sarcastic Raiden from the film onto him, or better yet, Jeffrey Meek's even more hilariously sarcastic Raiden from the Conquest TV show. It just makes more sense to me that a guy who keeps seeing his warriors lose and die for hundreds of years would be a little jaded. I never really saw him as third most important character as he's been portrayed in the last 10 years, nor do I see him as required for every game. Especially considering what might be the franchise's most beloved game doesn't have him at all. He's one that I think can benefit from a game off every now and then. Now I'd like to talk about the stages, since to me the stages in this franchise are more important than in most others, since they add so much to the world of Mortal Kombat. All stages are on Shang Tsung's personal island. First is the Courtyard, in my mind the MK1 stage, partially because it's the first stage in the rotation, mostly because to me it sums up the more simple setting of the first game compared to the rest of the series. It's got Shaolin monks making up the audience and they clap at the end of the round, which when I was a kid was the coolest thing. Also there's Shang Tsung at the back above everyone else, and the masked guards who exist to kill losers so that Shang can steal their souls. I always wish we could have gotten a masked guard playable at some point. It's the masks themselves, they're really cool. Bit of trivia, the digital actor for the masked guards is John Vogel, one of the artists and the guy who did the stories of the PlayStation 2 era games. I like this stage. Next one is just fine. The Palace Gate or Temple Gate. One thing about the 2D games is that some stages just have a lot of names. You've got that big statue in the back and masked guards that took me years to notice were even there. Also there's a little Pac-Man and Ghost cameo on either side of the screen. It's probably the least memorable stage in the game, which is probably why it's so far the only one to never appear again, even in compilations, remakes or just as a cameo. I would like to see another Goat remake in this stage though, an actual remake, not just a stage slightly inspired by it. Third is my favourite, the Warrior Shrine, taking place at night with statues of the entire playable cast with Goro in the middle. Scorpion and Sub-Zero have to share a statue though, otherwise they'd ruin the symmetry of having 3 on each side. This one's my favourite because it just looks really cool. It also adds a creepiness to Shang Tsung that he knew ahead of time to have statues built for each of his participants, even for the ones that didn't know they were even going to be there. And he knew to only have statues of the tournament's survivors. That's something I didn't bring up before. The canon reason these 7 were playable is that they are the only ones to still be alive the moment the tournament ends. I know some people are thinking, hang on, at this, but bear with me. This one has had cameos in later games, but it has never been a fightable stage ever again in a main game. It was really cruel to give it 2 separate cameos in MK11 but not have it be playable. The 4th stage is the Pit, sometimes called the Bridge, not to be confused with the Mortal Kombat 3 stage, also called the Bridge. I'd say this is the other iconic MK1 stage. The first 3 games all had their own pit numbered after the game, and I wish it was a trend that continued past that. This game has its own stage fatality. By doing an uppercut on the finish him, you knock them off the bridge and into the spikes below, where we can see the remains of a couple developers and Midway employees. I believe Ed Boon has told us who every one of them is once on Twitter, but the only ones I recognise are John Tobias and John Vogel. A nice touch is that Liu Kang's fatality will also knock them off the bridge. Yeah, I said he's not a killer, but accidents happen. The Pit is also famous for a little something else, but I'll get to that later. The 5th stage is the Throne Room. It's a nicely decorated room with dragon logo windows and the golden dragon statues. Shang Tsung likes gold shit a lot. In the back is Shang on his throne watching the fight. I also thought it was really cool back then that his head follows you through the fight, and that he also claps at the end of the fight. This stage will appear once more much later in the series, but I prefer the look of this version more with all the bright colours. Finally there's Goro's lair. This is the dungeon where Goro hangs out. It's littered with bones and has blood splattered on the walls. We can see further into the back where there's just a lot of glowing yellow eyes. We won't be finding out what they are for a long time. And you gotta wonder about the poor guy chained up in the middle of the stage. His skeleton doesn't look damaged, so you wonder if he just got his ass kicked and then chained up alive and left there alone to die. Another thing about this stage is that until you get to the end of the game, this stage doesn't play its own music. Through the arcade land around in Versus it only plays the Warrior Shrine's music. I really like that touch. This stage is fine, but I feel it's worn out its welcome in later games. It's the most recurring stage from the first game and I just think it's overused. They rarely do anything interesting with it, so I'd rather they instead remake another older stage that doesn't always get such good treatment, like the Warrior Shrine. I almost forgot to mention that every 3 matches in the game there's a Test Your Might minigame. Mash the buttons to fill the meter and when it's high enough, press block to strike. Each time you succeed, the next level has a stronger material. I'm okay with this minigame, but I'm fine with it not being in every game. I hate the later difficulties though, since instead of just leaving them, I keep trying and leave my fingers worn out for the actual fight. As you get higher up the arcade ladder, one of my biggest peeves in this franchise shows up. Ridiculous AI. It's not that bad in this game, although if the later AI opponents figure out a counter to one of your moves, you pretty much can't use that move again for the rest of the round because they'll counter it the exact same way every time. It also does expose the bigger flaw with this game's gameplay, which isn't much of a problem in casual multiplayer but definitely is with the harder AI. Just about everything is very unsafe and they can take advantage of nearly every attack you have. Most of the time it gets to the point where the only reliable way to fight them is constant jump kicks. It's the only mostly safe way to fight them. We make our way through the other 6 characters and end up with the mirror match. This is so far the only game to actually give some sort of explanation to fighting yourself. Later games mostly stick to changing the colour of the clothes when both players are the same character, but here they mostly darken the second player entirely. It gives them this weird off look as if they're a corrupted mirror image conjured up by Shang Tsung to throw the fighter off. Then Sonya ruins it by just wearing red instead. After the mirror match comes 3 endurance rounds, gotta fight 2 characters at once. I imagine this is another of Shang's tricks to really wear the fighter down to ensure they have no chance against Goro. These are the hardest parts of the game. Endurance 3 is a little different though. It's always in Goro's lair for one thing, and throughout the fight you can hear stamping and roaring while the screen shakes. This didn't make it into the main console port, so discovering this years later was really cool. It also finally plays Goro's Lair's music. Or it would, but this is on the Mortal Kombat Arcade Collection to PS3 and 360 where they just couldn't release a 20-year-old game without issue. We get the first few seconds, and then nothing. What happened? They never bothered to fix it either. After we defeat the final endurance opponent, instead of returning to the arcade ladder, they burst into flames and Goro drops down from the ceiling, dropping you right into the fight. I gotta say, when I first got here, I'd already gotten to the bosses of the next 2 games where, as I was expecting here, you just move up the arcade ladder to their icon. So when Goro just dropped down for the first time, I basically shit myself and didn't even try to fight him. He flawless victoried me and I shut the game off because I was a kid who was afraid of everything. Goro is a 2,000-year-old prince of the 4-armed Shokan race, son of King Gorbak and the still unseen Queen Mai, described as being half human, half dragon. He doesn't take much from dragons though apart from a scaly back. Weirdly enough, in the comic his race was first listed as Kuotan, but that name has since become the name of the capital city of the Shokan lands. His realm of origin is listed as Outworld, which is the source of this dark power that grows after each of Goro's wins. Even in this game, which was not guaranteed to be a success, John Tobias was laying down plans for the series' future. After Shang Tsung was defeated by the monk Kung Lao, he came back 50 years with Goro and has dominated the tournament since. I've seen claims of an interview with John Tobias where he says that Goro met Shang Tsung while he was imprisoned in the Shokan's Cobalt Mines for failing to win the tournament, and while its existence hasn't been proven, I think it fits really well. You see, one of his moves has him fire a green projection off his fist, which seems a little unfitting, but I like to imagine Shang taught Goro a little sorcery in exchange for freeing him. He can also just jump on you and crush you with his weight. His most famous has to be his grab and pummel though, where he lifts you up with his bottom arms and beats you with the top ones. Add to that his uppercut sending you shooting into the sky, and one punch makes you fly to the other side of the screen, and he makes a challenging boss. I used to like Goro. He's integrated into the game far better than any other sub-boss, including later versions of himself, with all those little touches I already mentioned. Back then he certainly cut an imposing figure sharing the screen with these digitised actors. But I gotta say, of the 4 characters portrayed by a puppet, Goro is the one who aged the most. The others to this day fit in seamlessly, but Goro does have an obvious claymation look to him. I think it's most obvious when he's walking, there's a sort of stiffness to it that I don't think was intentional. That's understandable though, he was the first, it's not going to be perfect the first time. That's not why I don't like him anymore. A later game, and a lot of people know which one I'm talking about, ruined Goro for me, and nothing that's come since has redeemed the character in my eyes. They had something special at one point with this character and they fucked it up for the sake of nostalgia, and I've now hated the character for more than half the life of the franchise. It doesn't take away his impact in this game, but I'm still mad over it. So Goro can't be swept, and he can't be thrown, which makes him immune to Sonya's leg grab, but some characters can get him trapped in a loop if you're quick enough. He's just as susceptible as jump kicks as everyone else, which helps. Sub-Zero can get a chain of jump kicks and slides if you just get the timing down. With Scorpion you can spear him, uppercut, jump kick, and time the spear just right so that it hits him right as he gets up, and repeat. The rest you just have to do good with. I said Goro's challenging, but he's probably the easiest of these big sub-bosses. Finally, we have Shang Tsung. Shang once did compete in Mortal Kombat on Earth's side, but he was disqualified for cheating. He was saved from his execution when he was taken in by Outworld, taught sorcery, and competed for them. He once took an opponent's soul, and as punishment the gods cursed him. He will age rapidly and die if he doesn't regularly feed on the souls of defeated opponents. A bad idea from the gods there, but it does make sense to me. I think the reason Shang cheated the tournament and stole that first soul are obvious. He's afraid of aging and dying, so he tries to get the champion's prize of not aging, then he steals another man's soul to halt his aging. This probably seemed like a fitting punishment to this world's more detached gods. The man is afraid of growing old, so we make him grow old rapidly. I just don't think they expected him to actually last and be able to keep doing it. But it didn't matter, because he won the tournament for Outworld and got that non-aging prize. He got 9 consecutive wins for Outworld, but before he could get that important 10th, he was defeated by Kung Lao and imprisoned for his failures. Once freed by Goro, he reappears within 50 years later after the mysterious death of one of the tournament masters. Once Goro won, Shang took control of the tournament and 500 years later here we are. He's ancient now, 500 years without that halted aging and needing to steal souls adds up. Shang has only one move of his own, his flaming skulls. They come out very quick and can juggle you if you're caught in the air. Something they once again only did in this game is that the skulls scream when shot out. like it's one of his stolen souls begging for freedom. Think about it, he's had to steal him to stay alive for around 1,000 years. How many do you think are trapped inside him, still aware? Being a sorcerer, he can also morph into any other character, including Goro. Like Goro, he can't be thrown, and sweeps will not touch him at all, which means Sub-Zero's slide doesn't affect him. I haven't spoken about the costumes because there isn't much to say about them in this game. Shang is the exception, this is still my favourite look for him. The sword he doesn't use to give the look of the retired noble warrior, and the robes that cover his feet to make it look like he's floating. I like the colour scheme too. At one point they started putting him in red a lot, but I've never liked it as a colour for Shang. Another thing about Shang is that the announcer is his voice.
Fight! Liu Kang wins. Finish him. Excellent. Fatality. Flawless victory.
Being a tournament host, it makes sense. He also doesn't speak if you win the round against him, because he's knocked out. One last cool thing is that while the fight is in Goro's lair, the music played is from his throne room. I like Shang. He's a really cool first boss for the series and will continue to have good appearances. At one point though it seemed the devs got bored of him and started treating him badly, but things are starting to look up for him as MK11 is showing the most love he's seen in years. Once we defeat Shang Tsung, we see a representation of the souls being freed from his body before he finally falls down dead, and we are declared the champion. Every character has their own ending consisting of 2 screens of text with an image each. Liu Kang returns the ownership of the tournament to the Shaolin and restores its pride and respect. Johnny Cage learns the true importance of his skills and uses what he saw as inspiration to make Mortal Kombat the movie and its many sequels. Kano and his gang take over the tournament and form a monopoly over it that brings shame to everyone involved. It ends the anarchy and the dismantling of the tournament and the Battle of the Sands, whatever that means. Sub-Zero assassinates Shang and gets a large reward from all of Shang's wealthy enemies. After this he retires, probably using the money to make himself disappear as nobody leaves the Lin Kuei and lives. Sonya frees her team and ends Shang's rule over the tournament and the Black Dragon. Even their ending is dull. Raiden crushes the competition and gets bored fighting mortals, so he invites the other gods to compete, which spirals out of control and ends with the destruction of Earth. Have a nice day. I gotta talk about this one. People sort of clung to this one as proof of an earlier, more ruthless Raiden that was changed in MK2 by him becoming a mentor. But John Tobias has said that this ending was a joke because Raiden was the one character he knew wouldn't canonically win. He was always intended to be the mentor. Scorpions is the most interesting, as we learn his true nature. Scorpion was marked to death by the Lin Kuei and murdered by Sub-Zero 2 years before the events of this game, leaving behind a wife and son. He was allowed to return to Earth to avenge his death. He kills Sub-Zero and wins the tournament, but can never know his wife and child again. It's funny, because when you look at the two, the one in blue with ice powers, and the one that tears off his face to reveal a skull and burns people to death, most would assume Sub-Zero to be the good guy of the two. And a lot of people, both fans and those working on adaptations, still assume that. But this ending flips that and we reveal that while killing out of revenge isn't exactly a good thing, Scorpion's the better person. He even says to Sub-Zero on the boat on the island in the comic, "I am not a murderer." He could just kill Sub-Zero right now, but he wants to do it honourably. So that's a lot of endings, and they can't all be canon. So what actually happened during this game? Before I start, one thing to mention is, while obviously not every ending can be canon, any information revealed about the characters in those endings is, or at least that was the case in the original games. Not many details of what happened during the tournament bracket. We know Sonya lost, most likely to Kano, and thus her team was executed and their souls eaten by Shang. Liu Kang emerges the victor but has to fight Goro. Liu wins and breaks Outworld's streak, but he's not done yet. He is here to oust Shang. Shang isn't having it though. He has his island start to crumble into the sea and tries to escape while setting his army of masked guards on the survivors. During this, an angry and dazed Goro emerges and starts a fight with Sonya, Kano and Johnny. While Raiden, Sub-Zero and Scorpion fight the masked guards at the palace gates, Scorpion makes his way to Sub-Zero and while Raiden watches, burns him to death. See, Sub-Zero survived the tournament but died immediately after. Going against his claim of not being a murderer doesn't leave Scorpion feeling at peace and he disappears into ash. Liu chases Shang to the warrior shrine and puts the championship on the line to challenge him. Liu defeats him with a flying kick but doesn't kill him, allowing Shang to escape while Liu leaves. Goro and the others have fought their way into the pit, which crumbles underneath them. Goro, Kano and Sonya fall in as the island explodes, but Raiden manages to save Johnny just in time and drops him off at sea. To be continued. That's not all to do in this game. There's a 1 in 100 chance at the beginning of the round to have a green ninja drop in the middle of the screen and allow a vague hint. I somehow didn't get him once playing the arcade version, which is just horrible luck. This is Reptile, and a lot of what he says is clues on how to find him. These clues are: tip et fo motob, or bottom of the pit backwards. This means we must be fighting on the pit. Fatality is the key, meaning I must finish the fight with fatality. The pit fatality doesn't count. Blocking will get you nowhere, meaning I can't press the block button. This meant that for most revisions of the game, Sonya couldn't fight Reptile due to her fatality requiring the block button. It also makes it harder for Liu Kang and Scorpion, since although the block button isn't required for their fatalities, they're much easier to pull off with it. Perfection is the key. I have to win both rounds without taking a single hit. Alone is how to find me, meaning I have to be doing this in single player. No just hooking up a second controller and leaving it to get an easy double flawless. And finally, look to La Luna being the moon. Every so often a shadow will fly over the moon at the beginning of the round. Reptile can only be fought if those shadows appear. I was hoping to get Reptile during the process of beating the game as everyone, but it didn't work out. Cruelly, the first time I got the shadows it was as Kano. You know, the guy whose special moves both use block. Something to note is that you can lose a round if you take damage, as long as you win 2 rounds of a flawless victory. The second time I got the shadows it was as Raiden, during an endurance match. Getting a double flawless is hard enough against one guy, with 2, I didn't have a chance. The third time was a Scorpion, during the credits. That was painful to watch. So I chose Sub-Zero once again and let the first opponent beat me up until I cycled to the pit. This is because the first AI opponent is the easiest, so I have an easier time getting that double flawless. Sub-Zero I went with for the freeze and the fact that his fatality is the easiest one that is burned into my mind. I cannot momentarily forget forward down forward high punch. Luckily the shadows carry over from the credits, so I got my chance right away and I pull it off, just back jumping and letting them walk into my kick. I should say I'm only aiming to get a fight with Reptile, not beat him, just because of the ridiculous amount of time it would take to constantly re-challenge him. I also already beat him in another version, as you will see. We fight Reptile in the bottom of the pit, which is a really cool secret. He's a mixture of Scorpion and Sub-Zero, having all their special moves plus walking twice as fast. Also, you know, blue and yellow make green. You can tell Ed Boon snuck him in last minute without anyone else knowing by the fact his name isn't in his life bar, it says Scorpion. Reptile's the first ever secret character in a fighting game that I'm aware of, but back in the day I was never interested to go after him. As I said, I got this game and the second at the same time and, spoiler, he's playable in that one, so I never felt the need to go after him, but I can't deny looking back how cool the way he was hidden was. I lost by the way. And that's the first Mortal Kombat. Not done yet because I did a couple parts too. This game isn't the best to play today, but I do think it holds up better than the first games of a lot of other classic fighting game series. It's the introduction to a world I love and I fully admit that the story, setting and characters will get it ranked higher than a lot of people would say it deserves. Next I'm going to talk about the Super Nintendo version, released the same day as the Mega Drive version in 1993, a little after the second game hit arcades. This was my introduction to the game. So I'm cheating a little bit here. This was not recorded with the other 2 versions. I did this one a year back with all the others that are part of the bonus episodes. The intention was to record the other 2 at some point back then, but it just didn't happen until I decided to change direction. So I hope you don't mind, but no way was I saving just this version for a bonus episode. As I said, I got this with MK2, so I didn't play this one as much. In fact, my original copy of the game must have hated that I was ignoring it for a younger, better looking relative because it just stopped working out of nowhere, presumably out of heartbreak. This is my second copy, but I've owned it far longer than my original. So, the big thing about this version is that Nintendo requested it be censored. Instead of blood, we're punching sweat out of people. People say all the fatalities were censored, but that's not true. Liu Kang stayed the same, obviously because it's not violent. Scorpion's and Sonya's were also unchanged. I guess stripping them down to a bloodless skeleton was fine. The 4 that were changed I'll talk about in order of worst to best. Worst is Kano's. He grabs your tit and you fall down dead while he proudly holds up an empty hand. I guess he's supposed to be digging his fingers into your chest, but it's pretty crap. Next is Johnny's. He embeds his foot into your chest. An interesting idea, but they wouldn't have been allowed to do it right. His leg just disappears into them instead of popping out the other side. I mean, where does it go? With his shadow kick, this would have been a more in-character fatality than just a decapitation had they been allowed to do it justice. Sub-Zero's is along the same line as Johnny's, more fit into his character but not as effective. He freezes you and then shatters you with a punch. Makes perfect sense if you're going to give him a less gory fatality, but it just isn't as memorable as his original. The best is Raiden's. Instead of blowing your head up, it reduces you to a pile of dust with your skull falling on top. This is not just the best censored fatality, not only is it just better than its weak original, I'm gonna say that it's Raiden's best fatality in the entire series. Yeah, it's not gory, but it's far more stylish than any of the bloody stuff he's had since. This really shows off Raiden's godly power. Everyone destroys body parts or can blow people up into chunks, but the God of Thunder obliterates you. He can leave no trace you were ever there. Of course he could destroy the skull too, but leaving it on the dust really sends a message of, don't cross me, because that could be you too. I hate that this one gets lumped in with the rest of them as just another crappy censored fatality, because it is one of the series' best. It also causes a cool glitch. Do it on Endurance 3 and it messes up Goro's colour palette, giving him this weird but cool metallic look for the first round. And while I'm still on the subject of Raiden, up to Mortal Kombat 4 his name is always spelled with a Y on the home consoles. I don't think we've ever had an official explanation given for this. There's been speculation that it's copyright issues with either the Raiden series of shoot 'em ups or the character Raiden from Fatal Fury, but I guess we'll never know. The pit fatality can still be done, but there's no impaling sound and the pit itself is spotless. You could eat off the ground. This is the timeline where Shang Tsung cares about the hygiene of his death traps. You know, I had this whole thing in my mind where I was certain this version had blood in it, and it was only after I read about the censorship online that Time rewrote itself and the blood disappeared from all copies. But then I remembered seeing Raiden censored fatalities as a kid, and now I think I have fake memories of having fake memories. Also, Goro beats up the Acclaim logo at the beginning, that's cool. We do lose the little video sequences on the characters' bio screens and the Goro Live screen. No ending pictures either, just the character standing in front of their warrior shrine statue with a text scroll. It does feel like Sculpted Software deliberately cut some corners because they knew a censored version wouldn't get much interest. Also, presentation wise the game looks and sounds fine, it's just not as good as the arcade graphically or musically. With one exception, I actually greatly prefer the Super Nintendo version of the character select screen. That has more oomph to it. Gameplay is weird though and doesn't match the arcade. The AI can also pull off some ridiculous shit. The other strange thing is that during endurance matches, once you defeat the first opponent and hit the second as they're coming in at the right time, they'll die in one hit. This helped a lot. So yeah, I beat the game as everyone on this version too. I will be adding this separately to the Conquered list because of the time spent doing it. This is the version I beat Reptile on. Since I did it here first, I didn't feel the need to spend the time doing it again. It's a lot easier on this version since you don't need the shadows over the moon. I know some people will scoff at this because it makes Reptile easy to find, but if you ask me, he'd already been hidden a year in the arcade. He's not a mystery anymore. Also, for some idiot reason I picked Liu and really struggled with that fatality. I got on the very last second. Thankfully it counted despite the fact that Liu missed. Interestingly enough, this is the only version of the game where Reptile has his own name in his health bar. He just kept walking into my jump kicks. And that's it. The Super Nintendo port of Mortal Kombat isn't all bad, I can still enjoy playing it, but it does have problems beyond missing gore. The gap in quality isn't big enough for me to rank it separately though, that's safe the really bad ports. Finally we had the Mega Drive version. Gotta admit, I wasn't expecting to enjoy this one going in. I'd played the other 3 Mega Drive Mortal Kombat parts before and didn't enjoy them. This one is the exception. The game is still censored at first, but putting in the blood code ABACABB on this screen turns it back on. The score is so well known that I've had it memorised years before I even owned this version. This one is going to be really short because there isn't a lot left to talk about, and I apologise if it comes off overly negative, but the negatives are the only interesting thing here because the game plays just about perfectly. Even with 3 buttons it feels like it should. The issues I do have plague all the Mega Drive ports. Firstly, while downgraded graphics are to be expected, I just feel they're very unappealing on the Mega Drive. There's a few other things lost too. Shang Tsung's death cutscene is gone and Kano's ending uses a different picture, and then the same picture hilariously stretched out. Also, Sub-Zero lost his own idle stance and had to share scorpions. The big one for me though is the sound. We lose all of Shang's voice clips except for the fight. And I know some people are fond of the Mega Drive version soundtracks, but I just can't stand them. I'm not great at describing music, but it just sounds very... is twangy the right word? I just really don't like it. The downgraded versions of the existing music sound bad and the new songs written for the game are just unmemorable. Some stages also got the wrong music. The Warrior Shrine gets the Palace Gates music, while the Palace Gates gets a new original track. Even the ending music is gone and it just keeps its forgettable new Goro's Lair theme drawing over it. I have seen comparison videos between the 3 soundtracks, but whenever I see people claim the Mega Drive versions are superior even over the arcade soundtrack, I'm sorry, but I just cannot agree in any way. Yeah, I beat the game again as everyone. I then used the Dullard cheat to fight Reptile. The shadows are in this version, I just used a cheat menu to make them appear. I've already done it the proper way once on the arcade version, I have nothing to prove doing it again. The pit bomb is also spotless in this version, but I assume there were space reasons for that. Reptile's spear and ice also come out green in this version, they're still calling him Scorpion. I lose here too. This wasn't supposed to be it. I also own the Game Boy and Master System versions, but as I've said before, I can't record my Master System 2. As for the Game Boy version, I'm sorry, I tried. I just couldn't stomach it long enough to beat it, which is a shame because it's the most interesting part. Another time. Maybe when I can record Master System games, I'll do the two 8-bit versions together. Yeah, that's the Mega Drive version. A better port than the Super Nintendo version, but not one I'll ever have any desire to try out again.